Hey everyone, my name is Mutlu Ramashevi. I'm representing Group 3 of the Digital Business Module. I will be doing an introduction of my fellow group members as well as doing a brief introduction of the SOE, which is Telkom. Our group members are Gregory Nicholson, Taban Kekana, Tanduma Kumeni, as well as Timothy Mukas. Now turning to the SOE. Telkom is 40.5% state-owned as well as 59.5% privately owned. It currently has a footprint over 38 countries in Africa and has about 14.9 million active subscribers. Now, when we look in terms of what problems are currently facing Telkom, we have summed them up or summarized the following three. Number one is recurring network outages, which affects both mobile as well as landline. And this is one of the problems which actually resulted in Telkom being voted as the worst network service provider in 2020 due to their 4.61% rate out of 10 in terms of network quality. Now, the second problem was that they relied heavily on old and inferior technologies due to their slow migration from ADSL to fiber, while their competitors actually made the migration in that particular aspect. They also suffered reputational damage due to the poor customer service. And when we look in terms of what the top drivers of service complaints are, you will notice that the top two are actually their turnaround time as well as no responses received from them. I will now be handing over to Taban, who will be covering organizational digital maturity as well as organizational architecture.
Thank you, sir. Organizational architecture is used as a form of a diagnostic tool to understand the organization's problem when launching or redesigning an organizational unit or project. The tools are used for organizations to evaluate and to assess business opportunities to gauge the risk of their decisions, the reward and sustainability of these decisions, and to better manage the ecosystem's operations and business strategy. Look at the slide at the moment, we have what we call customer engagement, technology, digital services, and operations. Customer engagement focuses on the journey required not only for a new way in engaging with customers, but a brand new way to approach channels and how they are managed. With the technology, it focuses on the journeys in which include infrastructure, transformation to 5G, data and security transformation, and the journey to open up new networks and system platforms via the APIs and third parties. The digital system or digital services journey involves not only innovating and designing new exciting digital services, but also learning how to manage the wider ecosystems and partners. The operations focuses on a journey that involves enormous amount of changes, of changing the culture of the organization, as well as the challenges of preparing the company to adopt new business models. On to the next slide of the digital maturity model. The digital maturity model aims to assess and analyze an organization's progress to digital transformation. It provides an indication of the organization's efforts to transform digitally in order to remain competitive in their industry. This model is dynamic and continuously changing as it aids the organization to establish short, medium, and long-term goals. This model aims to identify gaps in key areas in order for the organization to prioritize their efforts in achieving the organization's goals. This model has 5 core dimensions, which is customer, strategy, technology, operations, organization, and culture. These core dimensions are divided into 28 subdivisions, now later divided into another 179 individual criteria in which digital maturity is assessed. Once we have been able to complete the survey, we will then be able to establish the organization's level of maturity, as seen in the slide as an example, beginning of level 1, which would be initiating, level 2 being emerging, level 3 being performing, level 4 being advancing, and level 5 being the leading score between 1 and 5. As seen in the example on the slides, the black would indicate where the SOE, such as Telkom, should be, and the green being the measurements of where the SOE is currently. I'll be handing you over to Greg to give you the rest of our presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandro. I'll be looking at the Internet of Things, big data, and cloud computing. How is it that we can use big data collected to identify network issues? Can we use smartphones as sensors in relation to the Internet of Things? Furthermore, can cloud computing be used with regards to big data management? And lastly, how is it that we can create aggregated reports to send on to Telkom with relation to the big data? Basically, what I propose would be the creation of an app. This app would run in the background, and whilst this is running in the background of the consumer's phone, the app would be collecting and storing vital data points. When I say data points, this would be either signal strength, internet connectivity, upload, download speeds, and anything or any data point which is of vital importance to understanding how the network is functioning. Once all this data is collected and stored, it will then require cloud computing or computing at the edge to clean and summarize all this data. We would summarize all this data and create reports through the use of robotic process automation. These reports would then be of value to both myself as the customer and Telkom as the supplier. The customer would then have the ability to send this report on to Telkom. But this is the interesting part. We propose that in order for the customer to send this report onto Telkom, Telkom would have to reward the customer with either a small data package, some free airtime, or even some call time. This creates value in data for the customer, but also value for Telkom in that they are getting data sets which they may not have access to. Once these data points have been sent on to Telkom, it is up to Telkom then to analyze all the specifics of the data that they've collected. And what we might find is that areas where Telkom says it's able to provide X, it may only be able to provide Y, and we need to identify these areas where the network is failing. And this is important on the consumer side because often what we say we're able to provide isn't always what the consumer receives. So now Telkom has an insight into how it is that their consumers are now receiving the network and how they are experiencing the network. Further to this, the app could also provide cybersecurity solutions for the customers, a basic background scanning of their phones, just to ensure that their phones are perfectly fine and there are no threats. I'd like to hand over to my colleague Mtsuli to further explain AI. Thank you.
Artificial intelligence is vital for helping telecommunications companies to build self-optimizing networks, which then gives operators the ability to automatically optimize networks and improve their quality based on traffic information which is received from region to region. AI applications in the telecommunications industry use advanced algorithms to look for patterns within the data, and this enables telecompanies to both detect and predict network problems and resolve them before customers are negatively impacted. Such capabilities such as self-diagnosis and self-optimization can only be achieved using intelligence insights obtained from the data, some of which is collected through our app, which is called Together with Telkom. Now, when we look in terms of customer service complaints, we are introducing virtual assistants, which are otherwise known as chatbots. This will also enable us to improve the turnaround time when we receive customer complaints and also address the issue of no response received. These chatbots will take customers through a series of service forms in order to resolve or escalate their particular service issues. In order to authenticate such users, we'll employ blockchain security, which will authenticate our members and ensure that we improve our cyber security to avoid issues of cybercrime. I will now be handing over to Tando to do AR, VR, and mixed reality.
Thanks, Sam. So I'll be taking us through potential solutions for virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality to address Telkom's challenges. These would fall under what we're terming a phase 3 of solutions due to the sheer financial investment and technological advancements that are required to bring it to life. I'd also like to point out that these potential solutions focus on the internal issues in Telkom in addressing the recurring network outages and the reliance on obsolete or inferior technologies, and these will in turn produce a better customer experience. So the first is employee training, and here Telkom can create and maintain VR-powered training programs for their employees. What they do here is that they create a real-world simulation and train the employees where they go through what they'll be doing on a day-to-day to find their strengths and weaknesses. And then from this, they could create a database to address the challenges that they experience. The next is field service management. And here, augmented reality can assist technicians identify a variety of components of different machinery and equipment. And as we know, or naturally, field service technicians would encounter complex network and equipment issues on their day-to-day. And AR can assist with identifying the defects and estimating the repair time, which would be a lot more efficient than the manual process of doing this. Then remote support speaks to field service management, and that technicians may need additional support while doing repairs or addressing network issues on the ground. So then they could use AR to establish a two-way AV session with an expert. If you think of this in another field, you could make an example of medicine where a person could do a procedure while having an expert dialed in to guide them through the actual process. Moving on to the next slide, and starting off with equipment manuals. So AR enables smartphones or headsets can scan a QR marker placed on a machine to display key specifications and information. So you scan this, it pops up, and you have all this information at your disposal. And it can also be used by Telkom to train the employees in operating new equipment. The last of the recommended solutions in this section is maintenance. And here again, we'll be using QR codes placed on equipment and with the assistance of AR headsets to provide access to detailed historical maintenance records so that Telkom can implement proactive measures. Proactive is a very important word here because they've relied on obsolete and inferior technologies in the past, and that's let them down in a very, very big way. So they could use technology like this to forge ahead and stay on top of their potential issues. I'll now hand over to Timothy to take us through the platform business section.
Today, I'm going to talk to you about Telkom platform businesses and how multi-skill platform businesses will address Telkom's issues, as well as how it can integrate into the Telkom app or together with Telkom. As you can see on the diagram there, we have the demand side, which will represent the Telkom's customers, multi-sided business platform in the middle, as well as the supply, in this case would be Telkom. So what it incorporates is basically where Telkom, this multi-sided business platform links Telkom's resources directly with the customer. In this way, the customer can directly interact with whoever's working on the problem or issue at the time, or within the area. If there's an area outage, it will be assigned to a team. So how it's going to actually happen is that when a customer actually interacts on the app and sends a request of the issue, it will be facilitated by this multi-sided platform, which acts as an aggregator. And in this aggregation, it actually will link it to a key on the Telkom side where it will be assigned to a technician and facilitated by the call center agent. So in this way, between the customer and the technician, will be able to at least send through more information that's needed other than the one that was sent through the initial request, which could be just your initial registration details such as your name, email address, contact number, and probably your address. So those details wouldn't necessarily need to provide again. It's like a once off, and the aggregation in this diagram here would be a multi-sided platform, which would basically facilitate that. Link you to the technician where you can continue the interaction. This is a two-sided interaction where the technician will talk to you back and forth. So in this instance, we're primarily just focusing on the customer side, where you just be able to directly interact with the technician, and this would obviously facilitate the customer interaction in terms of reducing the bad customer service. To move on to the next slide, we'll have in the next slide, we'll have a diagram there that basically shows you how the flow of the data would happen through going through the requesting customer into the aggregator and then into the support side. You can see that I have support. I've got your retail network, sales and marketing, retail networking operations. That will be for the later phases. What will happen now is that we'll just only facilitate around the customer support side, which will incorporate what I've just spoken about. The rest of the slide will are going to speaking about the actual funding, which would be funded by the shareholders. We've broken up this into phases in that we'll only just focus on the customer service side, as well as the big data and IoT data that will be collected from this app. The development of the app as well will be sponsored in the first phase by the shareholders. And as we prove ourselves in terms of developing this app and prove the proof of concept, we'll be able to actually utilize it in terms of in the other phases where sales and marketing can also benefit from the exact same data and application. Going back to the actual resource that we'll be using in-house, BCX, as well as BCX will use in terms of the data infrastructure and the fiber as well. We move on to the next slide in terms of BCX and Jira. We'll be able to actually use those companies in terms of the existing network infrastructure that they already have. We'll be utilizing the fiber as well as the data centers that they currently have. In this way, we'll be able to at least leverage off the existing infrastructure where we actually benefit from this app, as well as moving forward into the technology. At this stage, I'd like to actually hand over to the next person. Thank you.
Lastly, and not least, we also need to mitigate crime because, excuse me, because Telkom has a lot of copper theft. We support the fact that they should move over to fiber because it doesn't have as much value in the theft as copper would. With that, that brings us to the close of this presentation. We thank you so much for taking the time out to listen and to hear our suggestions and how we can ultimately improve Telkom. From my side, I am very impressed with Telkom. I think it has a lot to offer, and I do foresee that there will be a major market player moving into the future. Thank you.